Tomlin announced Wednesday that Russell Wilson will be his starting quarterback for the Steelers. Tomlin said his decision was difficult, but he, it wasn't on a negative way. He added that both guys were extremely professional when hearing the decision, and both have conducted themselves very well since they arrived in Pittsburgh in March. Fields, in 56 preseason snaps, he was 19 of 27, passing for 199 yards and led one field goal drive. And Wilson was 25 preseason snaps, was 10 of 12, passing 73 yards and led one field goal drive. I don't know why you're writing this, Speedy. Wilson now has been a week one starter, 12 consecutive seasons, tied for fifth most in the NFL and NFL history. Oh, here we go. All right. So I'm going to be very, very nice about this because we have Let's Parlay at 10 o'clock, right?
Well, Wes apparently is it now. I thought he was coming in at 10, but he said he's going to come in now. He says he wants to do some picks while he is able to reel off sentences because he has been drinking.
Fine. Well, let me get into this first.
Yes, we could get into this first, and then Wes will bring you in right before our second guest, yes. Which, by the way, is a CFL guy. Wes, you should listen.
I'm going to get into this very, very nicely. What the hell is Mike Tomlin thinking? Honestly, what the hell is this guy thinking? Russell Wilson, I don't know him personally. We had Worthy on the show. He speaks very highly of him. That's because they probably are buddies, on the side. I don't know the respect that they have for one another on the football field because they played against each other in NCAA. Obviously, they have a very good relationship, but first of all, both these quarterbacks did not look good in the preseason. They looked horrible. Both of them. I don't want to hear that he was 10 for 12, 73 yards. He didn't throw one touchdown. And either did Justin Fields. But I think you have a better chance of winning because I believe Justin Fields is a better dual threat than a guy like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is not that quarterback anymore. He could move inside and out of the pocket. He doesn't have the legs anymore. He's 34 years old, 35 years old. It's at the tail end of his career. I understand why they're doing it because this is a veteran team, and they believe, and Mike Tomlin believes that he would rather a veteran quarterback start at the helm. I don't know if the offensive line and these offensive players that they have, like the George Pickens and the players, some of the youngsters that they have, trust or even believe in Russell Wilson. I do believe Russell Wilson has a lot to prove this year. Maybe Mike Tomlin giving him that edge and giving him the edge as the starting quarterback for this Steelers team is going to give him a little bit more confidence, and he'll go out there and put up the numbers that he did with the Seattle Seahawks. But right now, I just don't think Russell Wilson has been the same quarterback since he hurt his thumb. That's about 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, since he's been that quarterback. And that would worry me right now going into the season where the Steelers are in the hardest division in football. You have to play against Baltimore twice. You got to play against the Bengals twice. You got to play against the best defense in the league last year in the Browns twice. And now you have a Deshaun Watson. You have Joe Burrow. And now with a healthy Lamar Jackson and playing a full season like he did last year, and he was the MVP, I just don't know how this is going to work for them. I think going into the season with a dual threat quarterback that can use his legs and be so dynamic on the football field. Now, he is not as accurate as Russell Wilson, but how accurate has Russell Wilson been in his last 3 years? Last year was more accurate than he has over the last couple of years because they really made the offense simplified with, obviously a Sean Payton because he's a great offensive mind. I'm just worried about this Pittsburgh Steelers team offensively. They're more of a running team, and they for years they were all about running the ball. They have Harris. They have a dual threat. If you have Justin Fields, you can simplify the offense, run the offense through the running backs, which the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to do anyways. And I think they'd be more dynamic that way. It doesn't make any sense why they're starting Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, yes, he's making less money, and and the Broncos decided to pay his salary just to get him the hell out of there. What makes any Pittsburgh Steeler confident, or Pittsburgh Steeler fan, except the Pittsburgh Steeler, podcaster that we had on the show, yes, who thinks that Russell Wilson's going to have a breakout year? What makes them think that Russell Wilson's going to change his ways in the locker room? If you're hearing from multiple players saying that he's a bastard, and they don't like him, and that he thinks he's bigger than the team. He thinks he's bigger than the sport. And I understand what Worthy is saying, and I don't know him personally, but Worthy might be one of his best buddies. I don't know. I didn't ask him how close he is with Russell Wilson. There are guys that literally came on many different podcasts and shows said that Russell Wilson's an ass. So what makes anybody believe, and what happens when this team starts off 0-2 or 0-3? How is this going to work? Now, Mike Tomlin is a player coach, and this guy is a winning coach. He's never had a losing season. Well, how is Mike Tomlin going to turn this around when he says to Russell Wilson, you know what, I'm pulling out, I'm putting Justin Fields in? I mean, how is that going to work? Because we all know Russell Wilson has a short fuse. How is that going to work? I don't know. I think this is a bad move by Mike Tomlin. I would have started the season with Justin Fields. If Justin Fields doesn't work in 5 or 6 games, then put the veteran quarterback in and play your cards that way. This doesn't make any sense because I believe Justin Fields has a future over there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Russell Wilson has one more year. He's a one-and-done quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder, too, what the approach is going to be, because this is going to happen in so many different directions with the Steelers. Like, obviously, Russell Wilson's going to have better coaching than he did with the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett, but also, is it going to be better than Sean Payton? We don't know. Arthur Smith, I know our friend Sean Smith likes him as a offensive coordinator, but he has to prove himself again from what he was in Atlanta besides his first year, because he was very stubborn in his own ways. And I think you look at the state of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's had flashes of last year, but most of his game were good in the middle of the season and wasn't really that great beside that. Now, I do feel bad for the way the Broncos treated him with the injury stuff and not giving the clause in the contract and all that stuff. The Broncos ownership looks really bad for that kind of thing. But at the same time, Russell Wilson, as we heard from many different reports, has not always been the greatest teammate either. So how is it going to work with the Steelers right away?
Especially with losing.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing where the Steelers could have a myriad of outcomes that could come out, because you look at the offensive talent that the Steelers have. They have good talent on the team. I like their tight end and Freiermuth. George Pickens is a talented receiver. He's inconsistent, but he's talented. And their running backs are pretty good. How is he
inconsistent? He had 1,200 yards last year and like 7 or 8 touchdowns with who's his quarterback last year? He had like third-string quarterbacks throwing the ball. You say he's okay? He's a great wide receiver. I'm going to tell you this. George Pickens will be a top 10 wide receiver in the league this year. Mark that. Top 10 wide receiver in the league this year.
Now, it's interesting because Russell Wilson is, rather than Justin Fields, when it comes to the deep accuracy and the deep throws, will help Pickens more, because that, I think, will elevate his game. And maybe that's where Mike Tomlin is trying to get the best out of George Pickens that way, because they know he has the upside and potential to be a number 1 receiver compared to a lot of the other guys that they have. Calvin Austin's really just a gadget player. The kid they drafted this year, and Roman Wilson, is a good slot guy, but nobody's expecting him to be a big name type receiver. This is going to be a team that's going to rely like I was saying with the Bills last week, a lot more on 2 running back and 2 tight end sets, where they drafted a kid last year in Darnell Washington, a Georgia Bulldog, Jeff, that missed a lot of the season because he had an ACL injury at the end of the college season. And then Pat Freiermuth's always been a consistently good tight end. And then same thing with running backs. Jalen Ward and Najee Harris both played well at certain points last year. But the receiver is a big question mark that they don't really have besides Pickens, a high upside guy. So maybe that's the thing they're looking at with Russell Wilson. Maybe they feel like Justin Fields need a little more time to know this scheme. But at the same time, Arthur Smith's scheme is good with mobile quarterbacks. So you would think Justin Fields could get more things out of it.
He likes to, Arthur Smith's offense is run the ball. That's his offense. He likes to run the ball, and he uses multiple wide receivers in many different slants and schemes and all that other stuff. That's what he did with Atlanta. That's what he did as an offensive coordinator. They're going to run the ball a lot. Why wouldn't they start Justin Fields? It makes no sense. Justin Fields is the better dynamic player. He's the guy. Now, Russell Wilson's more accurate, but they're going to run the ball more, so you can use him in more different packages. I think it would have been smarter to use Justin Fields. That's what I would have went. And what did Carl say over here? I like Justin Fields, but he isn't the answer. If he didn't beat out Russ, he isn't the answer. No, he didn't beat out Russ because he was never going to beat out Russ. He was never beating out Russ. Never. That's what it looked like. Because when they made the move for Russell Wilson, they brought him in. They said that he is the starter. He is going to be the starter. That's what they said.
Right.
It didn't matter what Justin Fields did in the preseason and at OTAs. Mm-hmm. They were starting Russell Wilson no matter what.
Yeah, and maybe they just need a better backup plan as well, based on the fact that Russell Wilson last year, well, he did have a good statistical
he knows what he's
season.
Doing? Okay, we'll see.
We'll see if he knows what he's doing, because, again, the Steelers, they've had a quarterback just carousel, really, since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Even Ben Roethlisberger's last couple of years, too. He did not have the same arm strength. He did not have the same overall talent and mobility that he did throughout his prime.
Bring Fish in.
So I think you look at, like, they're trying to have to manage this as the closest thing they have, but Fields has the most upside. So it's a very tricky dilemma.
All right, Fish, unmute yourself. I want to hear your thoughts to it. Where do you think Tomlin should have went? Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and why?
I think he kind of didn't have a choice. They didn't take Wilson to be a backup. He wouldn't have signed with them. I don't know what the prearrangement was, but it seems like that was going to be the case. And as far as who you're going to win the most games with, I think it's probably Russell Wilson this season. Now, if you were trying to win going forwards, maybe the answer is Justin Fields. And I think that's the real situation here, because Russell Wilson, he's still getting paid. Of the $40 million he was supposed to make from Denver, he's only getting paid $1 million something or $2 million something from Pittsburgh. So they don't really have anything to really tie them to him other than he's proven that he can take teams to the playoffs. He's proven that he can block, take care of the ball. He can move it downfield. He does questionable things in games in the last few years where they weren't winning choices. However, you look back at his career, he's more than a game manager still at this point in his career. Is he elite anymore? Of course not. I had him in fantasy that last great year he had with the Seahawks right before he hurt his finger, and my team went all the way down the hill, and it was like in first at the time. He was crushing it. He was still – so that's only 2 years ago. Some people forgot
the year before. Like, Lamar Jackson won the MVP. Nobody was going to top it that year, but Russell Wilson was probably the second best quarterback that year.
He was outstanding, but it was because he was.
I love Russell Wilson. I just everything that I've heard over the last couple of years, I'm starting to worry that he is not the right decision for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially Mike Tomlin, who was thinking about retirement at the end of this year, and now he signed a 3-year extension on going into this season where he's had winning seasons straight through his career, and now you're deciding, hey, you know what? I'm going to go with the guy that nobody likes. I just don't. I understand what you're saying. They have a better chance of winning now, but do they? I mean, we don't even know what Justin Fields is Chicago didn't use him right. So, and Mike Tomlin's a better coach than Eberflus. I would definitely predict that. So,
and as questionable as Arthur Smith may be, he's still better than Luke Getsy.
Speaking of interesting stories, NFL Network's Mike Garofalo reports that the 49ers gave Brandon Ayuk a new 4-year, $120 million contract. The deal will be $76 million guaranteed and will be $30 million per year. Reports say that the Browns offered the most money of the teams that wanted to trade for him, but paid them less than what he got paid with the 49ers. The reports say that the contract will be front-loaded with John Lynch anticipating a new contract for Brock Purdy in 2 years. The 49ers have approximately $10 million in cap space following this signing. What it tells you right now is Deebo Samuel, this is the final year of Deebo Samuel. That's what it says. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is the final year of this run with this team. Now, George Kittle got an extension recently. Deebo Samuel got an extension about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. Deebo Samuel, they brought Pierre Soul in. The reason why they brought Pierre Soul in is because he's a younger Deebo Samuel. After giving a guy like Brandon Ayuk this kind of money, he is now the number 1 wide receiver. He is now declared the number 1 wide receiver. It's not Deebo Samuel anymore. I'm sorry, he's not. And now you're sitting here, you're paying 2 wide receivers $60 million. That's what you're giving him. Because Deebo Samuel's making 27, 28, and Brandon Ayuk is making 30. So now you're sitting here, you're paying 2 guys. There's no way they're going to be able to afford this next year. So they're going to have to get rid of one of them. Signing a guy like Brandon Ayuk 4 years means that they're going to part ways with Deebo Samuel. And now Deebo Samuel's going into a season where he's going to have to put up big numbers if he wants to play somewhere else. So there's a lot of interesting, questions here on why they did this. Now, obviously, the Brock Purdy thing is that they're going to have to give Brock Purdy money. They're not going to have to give Brock Purdy Joe Burrow money. He's not that type of player. He's not a game-changing quarterback. He is a guy that fits the Kyle Shanahan scheme. Now, if Kyle Shanahan stays there, Brock Purdy's going to get paid. But what happens if this year the 49ers fall short and they lose in the second round? This could be Kyle Shanahan's last year. And if that happens, Brock Purdy might not be the same quarterback. So I think the way they're looking at it is Brandon Ayuk is a game changer. They're going to pay those changing players. And Deebo Samuel, even though when he's on the field, he's a game changer. He changes that whole offense. Saw last year when he got hurt, that was a different offense. But Brandon Ayuk put up unbelievable numbers. He put up numbers like CeeDee Lamb did last year. He put up numbers like Justin Jefferson can do. So if he can be that kind of game changer without Deebo Samuel, and he can prove that this year, if he's the go-to guy, well, then they know that they can go and they can do without Deebo Samuel. They can even move him in the offseason and get a third-round draft pick for him. Or they can trade him in the middle of a season if they really don't need him, if Pearsall is playing at the top of his game. I think this is a great move by the 49ers, because if they didn't make this move, he would have went to free agency last year. They would have franchised him. It would have pissed him off, and then he would have said, trade me or I'm not playing. So they did the right thing giving Brandon Ayuk that kind of money. I just wonder if he's going to be able to do this as the number one guy. Last year, he was the number one guy when when Deebo Samuel was hurt. But George Kittle was playing at an all-pro player, all-pro level again last year. And when you have that kind of blanket like that, it opens up the field for guys like Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if George Kittle's going to stay healthy for a full season. He's now going to be 32 this year. He's getting up there in age as a tight end. I worry about that. And I don't know if Brandon Ayuk is a predominant number one guy. So I think they had to make this move, because then the Patriots and all these other teams were going to give him $40 million next year. And they would have given him a top dollar for the type of money that they're paying him this year. But I just worry that he is not a number one guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the scheme-wise, Deebo Samuel is more natural of a fit because they rely a lot on yards after the catch. But talent-wise, they don't have a receiver like Brandon Ayuk that is such a good route tree, can go deep, is physical, where he can catch the ball in tough situations. And I think that kind of thing is not replaceable, where you have Juwan Jennings, who's kind of a big-bodied specialist possession guy, who's a good third down guy, but not much else. And Ricky Pearsall, like you said, is a younger Deebo Samuel, a smaller Deebo Samuel, but it's very similar traits to that kind of thing. And Brandon Ayuk, if they were to trade him, it wouldn't have been that same type of offense.
And Ricky Pearsall and him are very good friends, Brandon Ayuk. So that was one of the reasons why he wanted to stay there, because him and Ricky Pearsall are actually really, really close friends.
And I think that is the move they really needed to make. Maybe they had to overpay for him a little, because I think 28 was what they were trying to do, but they gave him 30. I think it was kind of that similar trend. And now they got to figure out with Trent Williams, obviously, but still they had to make that kind of thing work, because they don't have that kind of concept. Brandon Ayuk's route tree is one of the best in the league. And we were talking with all the PFF guys we've had on too. Like, he was Pro Football Focus third-rated wide receiver last year. Like, that, those other traits that come into it, even when he's not catching the ball, are so necessary for that scheme to happen. And even if he's not statistically looking like the number one guy all the time, he does a lot of things even away from the ball.
I don't know if I agree with you, Errol. I definitely agree with you, Speedy. We've talked about Ayuk being one of the best in the game, but as far as what we're talking about, who they're going to get rid of as far as Deebo, I don't know if it's going to be Deebo. They are perfect offensively with those weapons. And if Pearsall can be opposite Ayuk on the other side, now they have a full complement, and the last guy's on a rookie contract. They don't have Trent Williams out there right now. That guy commands a lot of money. I think that's the guy that might be moving, and he might be moving sooner than later. They don't want that huge cap hit.
If they move him, their season is over. If they move him, the season is over. They're not winning. If that's the way they're going, I would move Deebo Samuel over Trent Williams. Trent Williams is that offensive line. You move him, they don't stand a chance against those top defenses in the league. And by the way, the Lions are going to be much better because they actually have a secondary. So good luck in trying to beat the Lions when they're down by 18 going into the second half. There's no way in hell they beat the Lions this year if they don't figure out this Trent Williams problem, because Trent Williams changes all the dynamic for them. And I think you're wrong. I think Deebo Samuel is 1 foot out of the 49ers. I think he knows that now because they brought Pearsall in. Ricky Pearsall is the same player as Deebo Samuel. Why do they need two dynamic players that play the same way? It doesn't make sense. So I think that obviously the way they made this move and the reason why they signed it, and now you can move Deebo Samuel next year. You can get a third-round draft pick or fourth-round draft pick for him. You trade him to a team, you get something back for him, and you build from there. Because listen, if you're going to draft Ricky Pearsall, who, by the way, everybody thought was a second, maybe even a third-round draft pick, you drafted him that high, you obviously think that he is a number one or a number two guy. So if you're going to pay a guy like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, you can't keep 2 wide receivers on your team that are making about $65 million. It doesn't make sense. They're not going to do that. ESPN's Seth Wickersham reports that there will be restrictions in Tom Brady's broadcasting contract if he becomes part owner of the Raiders. The NFL said that Brady would not be allowed to attend broadcasting and production meetings, go on another team's facility, or see practices of other teams. He also would be prohibited from publicly criticizing games, officials, and employees of other teams. Greg Olsen faced similar restrictions in his first year with Fox Sports because he was still being paid by the Panthers. Brady's stake with the Raiders, if it is approved, would be 10% of ownership with the team. Brady signed a 10-year, $375 million contract with Fox Sports, the largest ever. First of all, Tom Brady's an idiot. He is a complete idiot doing this. I understand that, 10 years from now, that 10% could turn into hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's guaranteed 10 years, $375 million. What's he doing here? Does he want to be a broadcaster? I don't understand this. Now, I understand why he's doing it. He wants to be a team owner. LeBron James came out and said when he retires, he wants to own an NBA team. He even said that he'd go into ownership with an NFL team. He's a billionaire. He'd have a chance to do that. I understand that these players want to own things, but why go this route right now? The Raiders are an organization that always falls apart. Ownership, Davis running the organization, he doesn't have a pot to piss in. That's why he's asking for, partial ownerships for ex-NFL players and all that other stuff. I don't understand this move by Tom Brady. Again, I love Tom Brady. I think he's going to be a great broadcaster, but we don't know what Tom Brady's going to be now, because if he does get this stake of 10%, how is this going to work for Fox Sports? Does Fox, null and void that contract, and we might never see Tom Brady as a broadcaster? I don't know how this works. Could they get out of that contract? That's something that I would like to know. Is that in his contract that if he goes into ownership or he buys into another team or another organization or whatever, a college team, not a college team, I'm sorry, a CFL team or an XFL team, does this contract go become null and void? It doesn't make any sense. I think I want to see what Tom Brady is as a broadcaster first. I want to see how that works, because if he's really, really good his first year, he can renegotiate that deal and say, you know what, I want $1 billion. Look at what Tony Romo has done for his career. He left football with a bad back, and he's making more money as a broadcaster. That guy's making, what, 25, 30 million a year as a broadcaster. Tom Brady's making more than that. Tom Brady is the highest paid broadcaster in professional sports history, and he ruined this. He ruined this because now he says, you know what, I want a stake in ownership. Why would you pick the Raiders? Out of all the teams you could pick, you picked the Raiders? I think you had a better chance of going to Washington. Even that organization with Schneider, that big idiot. That would have made more sense, him going to Washington, than going to the Raiders. We've heard Robert Kraft is looking to move and sell his team, or sell profits off his team. Why didn't he go and buy into the Patriots? The Patriot fans would love to see Tom Brady as a partial owner over there. He's like the face. He's been the face of the New England Patriots for 25 years. This move makes no sense. No sense. Now, again, Tom Brady wants to be a boss. That's what he wants to be. And in his thought, that 10% of ownership could turn into hundreds of millions of dollars. And if Davis ever wants to sell the team in 10 years, the way these teams are getting sold right now, if he owns 10% of the Raiders and they sell the team for $10 billion, how much is that? What is that number? That's like, what is that? Is that if he sells it for $10 billion, what is it? You're an economics guy, Fish. What is that? If he owns 10% of the Raiders and they sell it for $10 billion, what would Tom Brady be making on that deal? $1 billion? $1 billion. So yeah, if in 10 years it could be worth something. By then, he'd be making $1 billion as a broadcaster. The amount of money that this guy could be bringing in and tailing in, and he doesn't have to worry about it because who knows what's going to happen in the future with the economy the way it is. We don't know what the economy is going to be. We could be run by dictators in the future. We don't know what these teams are going to be worth in the future. We don't. Obviously, it's going up, but again, we don't know where the inflation and where the economy is going. We don't know what's going to happen. So I'll take the guaranteed money, the 10 years, 375 million any day. And I don't have to stress about anything. And I don't have to worry about the Davis family screwing me. Okay. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, there's no need for like that kind of investment anyway with, I think, the guaranteed money you're getting on this kind of deal. I know obviously you want to be able to pursue broadcasting too, but again, you're limited, and then now you can't go on the facilities, you can't do this. Like Tom Brady, like interacting with players is probably something that he would have like wanted to benefit on, like going forward with a broadcasting career. Like he is a player to player interaction with that kind of thing. Like I know in the comment section, Keith is mentioning Tony Romo. Like these players get closer with other players as alumni, as NFL alumni with the NFL Players Association. Like Chris Collinsworth now has expanded his role even just beyond the Sunday Night Football, where he's podcasting and interviewing all these players as well. Like Tom Brady has that firsthand relationship with a lot of these guys. These Patriots, throughout his Patriots career, they changed players.
If it wasn't the Raiders, it'd be different.
Sure.
Okay. If it wasn't the Raiders, I'd say good move by if the Patriots were offering 10%, if Robert Kraft was offering 10% of that organization, that would make sense why he would go back to the New England Patriots. If I don't know, I'm just mentioning Miami and ownership over there, like they were doing years and years ago. Mm-hmm. They were offering 10%. He lives over there. It would make sense on why he would buy into Miami. They're an organization. Mm-hmm. It's a great place to live. It would make a lot of sense why he would go down there and live there, being that he has a home over there. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense. I understand he'll party in Vegas. It's the Davis family. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Miami was one of the teams when Brady first left the Patriots, too, that he was considering going to, wanting to stick it to the Patriots. And two, there was rumors of that kind of thing with, I think, a stake being sold with the Dolphins, and they ended up selling to somebody else at the time 4 years ago.
Mark Davis is the worst businessman in professional football. Him and Schneider were the worst. Both of those guys, equally stupid, okay? Mark, and I'm going to say this. I'm just going to let everybody know. Mark Davis didn't even buy his stadium. He used tax money to buy that stadium. He didn't even pay for it. He used the taxes of Vegas to buy that stadium.
I think the Rams owner did the same thing with the Chargers.
I'm just saying, it wasn't even his money.
Yeah.
It wasn't even his money. He used tax-paying money to buy that. That's why he left Oakland. He said sayonara to the Oakland Raider fans, and he went to Vegas because he didn't have to pay for a new stadium. That's what you're going to work with? You're going to work with that idiot? Good luck.
Yeah, it's been a dysfunctional mess for the entire 21st century. The Raiders, like we talk about, like
good luck.
Who's the most corrupt organizations in the NFL right now? Like the Raiders, they were a lot like Washington, like historically good in the 70s and the 80s, and all of a sudden they're falling apart because of bad ownership. His dad was partially to blame at the end of his tenure for some of it before he passed away, but Mark Davis has gotten anything better with that. Now, I don't think it's as bad as Snyder,
the only thing that would make sense, and we're going to bring Fish on this. The only thing that would make sense is that it goes into ownership and. He tallies and he gets sick of being retired and he goes and he plays this year if there's a bad injury.
Yeah.
And he goes on an NFL Super Bowl run again. I mean, maybe that's what he's
prevented from playing if he buys stock in the team too.
I don't understand it. I don't. Fish, your opinion on this stupid thing. I mean, seriously.
This is what someone who has unlimited money does. Well, he doesn't care about the money he might lose in a deal that for some of us would be unconscionable to make a decision that might cost you $50 million, $70 million. What is that to him? He got a divorce from someone who I think made more money than him in Giselle, and he probably gets paid by her on top of being single in Vegas. Look at what he's doing. Our buddy Carl's right. He's partying in Vegas off of alimony. And not to mention what else is going, all the money he's getting from Fox or, whatever, I'll just be an owner of the team. I'll have the suite in Vegas. You know they're going to have more deals with the gambling companies and the casinos than anyone else. He'll make money hand over fist by the time he's out of it. And the guy played for so long, took a beating. I guess this is going to be, he had the roast, got it all exercised, and now he's just going to rock out in Vegas until he hits 50, man.
Netflix released a documentary centering Connor Stalions, the Michigan staff member who was the mastermind involving the sign stealing scandal in 3 years, for the last 3 years. The documentary shows Stalions doing it for his passion for the Michigan football more than money or glory, and he will die a happy man since Michigan won a national championship. It is also revealed instances where Stalions tried to claim his email was hacked and that there were fans and other staff members dressed like members of a cartel. Stalions also told the NCAA investigators that he doesn't recall attending the Michigan game versus Central Michigan last season. But Barstool's founder, David Portnoy, says he knows that Stalions was lying. He also revealed 52 texts between Stalions and Sharon Moore, who was hired as the Michigan next head coach once Jim Harbaugh went to the Chargers. There is also video proof that Stalions attending the national championship game versus Washington and many other opposing teams' games throughout the last season. Stalions says at the end of the documentary, I would do it again. I'll do the same thing again. Okay, I just want to let everybody know something. Stalions, on what I saw and what he claims he was doing. Now, he obviously is very good friends with David Portnoy, and David Portnoy is paying him. He needs to make some money. After this whole thing came out, he was on these pizza things, and every time, David Portnoy was at one of these pizza shops, you see him walking out with a pizza, and everybody says he's not hiding and all that other stuff, that he wasn't hiding in plain sight. I'm going to say this. Somebody ratted on Michigan. Somebody did. And something tells me it was Ohio State. And I'm going to tell you why. I understand that Ryan Day, for all those Ohio State fans that love him and him doing what he did and winning a national championship the way he did, that's great. If anybody knows who Ryan Day is, his brother is a private investigator. Okay? So there is no proof that Ohio State had anything to do with it, that Ryan Day had anything to do with it. When they interviewed Ryan Day, he said, I don't want to talk about it. I have nothing to do with this and all this other stuff. The problem is here, every single football team does this. Every single football team. And now the new rule is that, the coaches and the players can have microphones now in their masks, just like the NFL. And this will take away, obviously sign stealing. This has been going on forever. Ever. And if you look at the background, and by the way, Speedy, you saying that Stalions, he said that he was hacked. He was absolutely hacked. It's a fact. He was absolutely hacked. How did they get all that information? How did the NCAA and everybody got all that information that he had in his email? He didn't reveal that. How did they get it? Somebody hacked into his email and stole it. Now, again, it was an interesting documentary. And if you're a Michigan Wolverines fan, and I know Carl is, I know he is a Michigan, so I know he's seen it. I don't know anything about Connor Stalions. I learned a lot about him on that documentary, that he bled, Michigan and Wolverine blood since he was a kid. His mother was a Wolverine fan. His father was a Wolverine fan. He grew up a Wolverine fan. He was a captain. He fought, in Afghanistan. He did so many different things before he became a coach, and he was a walk-on coach for the Wolverines. And it's not easy to read, hand signals. And what was so interesting about what he did was he took video and pictures of him standing against a blank wall of all the hand signals, 3,000 hand signals, and he cut them up. And then when he saw the hand signals that some of these teams were making, he knew it was going to be a running play or a throwing play. And he even said, he says, I was barely ever wrong when I knew they were throwing the ball or they were running the ball. It takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice. And he obviously practiced it. And he wasn't just with the Wolverines. Before he became a Wolverine and he was working on that staff. And by the way, he wasn't even getting paid in the beginning working on the Wolverine staff. He was doing it for free. He was traveling with his own money. Now they're saying the NCAA is looking in that he was paying, he was getting tickets and he was giving his friends and his family free tickets to go to different games. But he said it on a thing. He said it on a documentary. For years, he was going to USC games. He was going to Florida State games and Florida games. He was paying for those tickets before he was even playing. He was working on the staff of the Wolverines. And then people saying that, in his seat, people were videotaping and sending him, and he admitted to it. His friends were sending him video, but he already knew the play calling and the hand calling and the hand gestures on what was going on with those football teams because he was studying them. So I don't know who's telling the truth, but it's kind of pathetic that, of course, the Wolverines and Michigan were winning football games, knocking off Ohio State back-to-back years in three years straight. And then they find it. Connor Stalions gets in trouble. They suspend him. And Michigan pretty much threw him to the Wolves. And he even went out there. He says, I don't care as long as my brothers in arms win a championship. It was worth everything that I did. Everything that I did. Meanwhile, he still to this day admits that he had nothing. He was not stealing signs. He was not going to games and videoing any of the games. He was not.
Yeah. Definitely a very more elaborate operation. I'll just say this quickly because our Let's Parlay guys are in, but it was definitely something that he doesn't even care about at this point. He didn't do it for glory. He was the documentary was saying, he didn't do it for money. He cared that much about Michigan football that he was going to do it.
But there was no proof that he was videoing any of the
not
games.
Him specifically.
And who cares if he was at that game? Who cares if he was at that game and that was him? What does it matter? He was standing there with glasses. What the hell was he doing?
Definitely shows it was much more elaborate process.
He was jerking off in the back room. Who the hell cares what he was doing?
Who says that wasn't anything that realm at that point? Because there were students being hired, staff members being hired to go to not just Michigan games, opposing games too. That's the crazy thing.
It's been going on in college football forever. Just look at Deion Sanders. Look what he's doing over there with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
You think that these guys weren't getting paid under the table? Now it's legal. So now all the coaches don't want to coach and they're leaving college football and they're retiring. Do you think it's a coinky dink? Come on, guys. This has been going on forever. Yeah. College football. Everybody's trying to find an edge. Everybody's trying to find an edge. You think that this documentary was the only documentary? You think that Connor Stalions was the only guy doing it? Come on, guys. It's pathetic. And the only reason why it happened is because Ohio State, I'm going to admit it, Ryan Day was the one that ratted them out. I don't care what anybody says, and there's no proof that Ryan Day did it. He was 100% behind it. 100% behind it. When they were interviewing him, he wouldn't answer any questions. And if you just go look at the background, and by the way, the firm that Ryan Day, that, obviously where Ohio State puts their money and everything that firm was the same firm that was, somehow, pressed on the Connor Stalion thing and was the one that ratted Connor Stalion out. So I don't think that's a coincidence. And by the way, that firm was in Ohio. So there's no coinky dink from this. I absolutely believe it. Go listen to Louisville's defensive coordinator. I agree with you, Carl, and I'm not even a Wolverine fan. I am not even a Wolverine fan, and I agree with you. The only team that could have done this was Ohio State. The only team. And Ryan Day, to this day, will not even admit it. He didn't even, you could see right through his face. You could see when they were interviewing him and they asked him if he knew anything about it. You could see that he knew something about it. So, listen, everybody's trying to find an edge. It's sports. Everybody's trying to find that. And by the way, when Connor Stalions got suspended, they still won every single one of the game. They went to a national championship and won. They didn't even need Connor Stalions.
Fish, before we get Let's Parlay on, what are your thoughts?
I think this is the second worst cheating scandal I heard of behind the women's soccer Canadian team from the Olympics, which they were flying drones over practice for over a year, stealing everything about it. Now, that is some legitimate cheating. And to do it at the Olympics, which goes back to ancient Greece, that even Hitler allowed some modicum of fairness in 1936 in his Olympics. That's completely ridiculous. Football, however, has always been about gamesmanship, and stealing signs has always been gamesmanship. Coming up with signs, I was doing this earlier today, trying to come up with a series of signs that we would have contingencies for. So if somebody stole our sign, we could easily change it up in the second half or in the next quarter. We have all sorts of ways to beat systems like that. And if you can't beat a system like that, you got to be better with your signs. And I don't find, and I was joking, this is not the second worst. This is nonsense.
It is nonsense.
And it's the Ohio State, not Ohio State. If you talk to any of the Ohio State.
I'm sorry, though. The Ohio State. Okay.
Which I am not one of, have never been. I've always loved Michigan personally, and hail to the victors and everything that goes along with it.
I'm not a Michigan. I am not a Wolverine fan, but I think what they did to Connor Stalions is ridiculous. It really is. It's so stupid. And this guy really studied it. He was in the service. He was in the Marine Corps. He worked on stealing signs, in war. Okay. So this guy was a captain. This guy fought for our country, and the Wolverines, the Michigan Wolverine, the director, everybody, even Jim Harbaugh threw him to the wolves, pretty much completely washed away with him. And it's pretty pathetic because they wanted him to do it. And I'm telling you this right now. For what I've seen in that documentary, he was not videoing anything. He didn't video anything. If he was sending his friends to go to the games to watch the games and get information from, so the hell what? Like you were saying, Carl, if you think people are stealing your signs, then change them. Have your hands in your pants or something. Grab your balls. Speedy, you know all about that, right?
I wouldn't do it to another person.
Well, you could steal some signs.
What am I? I'm not going to do that.
You have your dog. Yeah, have your dog on the sidelines and he can lick your ass. That's a sign.
God.
I mean, that's a sign.
First of all, I never bring my dog to a college football game. Second of all, I definitely would not expose that kind of behavior in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
They're not
going
going
to Michigan Stadium. Carl knows.
If it's
the biggest stadium.
If it's 2 licks, it could be something else. That could be a running play.
I don't care what it is.
If he can get his tongue stuck in your ass, that could be a throwing play.
I don't care. I'm not going to encourage that kind of behavior for sign stealing nonsense when I'm going to run this kind of operation. The way that Stalions do it is much more elaborate and actually more tactical than doing it in a gross manner like that. I'm not encouraging what he did, but I'm definitely not going to do it in a way that I get public humiliation based on that kind of thing.
If you're trying to win games, why not?
Well, I'm not getting involved in that. Thank you, Reno Johnny, for showing up so we could actually deviate away from this conversation. I just texted Wes to come back in now. He should be ready for that kind of thing as well.
All right.